Thank you. Senator Tuberville.
Thank you. Mr. Kim, you touched on this very briefly in your opening statement. The EU and UK are moving quickly to attract, blockchain-based innovation. What risks are we at in the United States? What are we going to face if we don't get more urgent about what's going on? I recently talked to some exchanges, and they're freaking out basically about, hey, we've got to do something or we're going to have to move out of the country. What's your thoughts?
Thank you very much for your question, Senator. As I mentioned in my testimony, it is a global race to the top. So other jurisdictions have not been waiting for the U.S. to lead. You have the EU, Singapore, Japan, UK, all looking to attract technology resources. I see blockchain development and digital assets as the plumbing and infrastructure for the second half of the 21st century. We need the U.S. to lead. That said, despite the progress in other jurisdictions, everyone is watching the U.S. now. They're seeing the Senate having passed Genius. They're seeing development of market structure bill, including in this committee. And even the UK is actually a really good example, Senator, where they had been taking a very modular, patient approach, but recently they announced an all-at-once approach. And I believe that there's an opportunity for the U.S. to cement its leadership and make sure this innovation stays here in the U.S., and that starts with a comprehensive legislative framework, as I discussed, Senator.
Thank you. Ms. Sexton, you want to follow up on that? You got anything on that about us dragging our feet?
Senator, I encourage this committee and the House to continue to work on legislation in this area. I think it's very important. I can tell you that from our perspective, we have, as I indicated, member firms already engaged in this activity, and to the extent that the CFTC would be provided with not only anti-fraud, but also regulatory oversight over digital commodities, I think it'd be very helpful as far as our own regulatory structure here.
Thank you, Mr. Benham. The U.S. model of having two regulators, and we touched on this briefly, only works if they are a clear jurisdiction. You're very familiar with that. Can you talk about the need to clear up, this regulatory definition between the CFTC and the SEC?
Senator, thanks for the question. It's the first and most important step, because from that point, the two agencies will be able to really start to develop rules either distinctly and uniquely or in a joint fashion. But this is certainly a new asset that has a lot of characteristics that are similar to other assets, but also have a lot of characteristics that are novel and new and are going to require a different way of thinking about it. So I do think it's critically important. I also think, putting myself in my old shoes, it is important that the agencies get a bit of a steer from this committee and Congress, because there are lines that I think this committee and the Congress can draw to help the agencies start to really define the landscape of what tokens are securities and what tokens are commodities.
Thank you. I yield back.
Senator Tommy Tuberville raised concerns about the United States potentially falling behind in the blockchain race, noting that other countries, such as the EU, UK, Singapore, and Japan, are rapidly advancing to attract blockchain-based innovation. He pointed out that some exchanges have expressed worries about being forced to relocate if the U.S. does not take more decisive action soon. In response, Mr. Kim emphasized that blockchain development and digital assets are poised to serve as the foundational infrastructure for the latter half of the 21st century. He stated that the U.S. must take the lead in this emerging technology, though he acknowledged that other jurisdictions have not been waiting for the U.S. to step up. Despite this, he pointed out that the global community is watching the U.S., noting legislative steps such as the Senate's passage of the Genius Bill and the ongoing market structure bill discussions in the Senate committee. He further highlighted the UK's shift from a modular to an all-at-once approach, which presents an opportunity for the U.S. to solidify its position as a leader in blockchain innovation. Ms. Sexton echoed these thoughts, urging Congress and the committee to continue working on legislation for digital assets and blockchain regulation. She emphasized the importance of the CFTC being given both anti-fraud authority and regulatory oversight over digital commodities, which she believes would provide crucial clarity in the regulatory landscape. Mr. Mumm addressed the issue of the U.S. having two regulators, the CFTC and SEC, stating that the most critical step in moving forward is clearing up the jurisdictional boundaries between the two. He explained that the regulatory framework needs to adapt to the unique characteristics of blockchain and digital assets, which differ from traditional assets in several ways. He also emphasized that Congress could play an essential role in guiding agencies to better define what tokens should be considered securities versus commodities. The conversation concluded with a shared consensus on the urgent need for regulatory clarity. Without swift and decisive action, the U.S. risks losing its competitive edge in the rapidly evolving world of blockchain technology. Both Mr. Kim and Ms. Section agreed that legislative efforts and clear regulations are vital to maintaining the U.S.'s leadership in this space.